I asked them about that one particular part where everybody's talking, and they all cried out Epstein Island. And I went, oh, okay. Now I understand what we're up against. Epstein Island isn't the only sex island out there.
For years, Jim Caviezel tried to warn the world but was mocked and pushed aside by Hollywood. After the release of Sound of Freedom, he claims the truth about trafficking was ignored instead of being supported. Now he's making a shocking allegation, saying he begged Ellen DeGeneres to help him save kids on Epstein Island, but she stayed silent. And today, Caviezel says he's ready to reveal even more. So, what is really going on? Let's get into it.
People found out that Ellen was mean, and all these people came out and said, Ellen's actually a bitch. She lost everything. She fell apart, disappeared, because people found out that this character that she was portraying in a half an hour on a television show is not really who she was. But I hadn't already known that, because I had a buddy who worked for her. He was like, she's a fucking monster.
Not so long ago, Jim Caviezel was living the Hollywood dream. Fame, money, respect, everything an actor could ask for. That he could have stayed quiet, taken the roles, collected the paychecks, and nobody would have questioned him. But he chose to make The Sound of Freedom, a film based on the true story of Tim Ballard, a man fighting trafficking networks most people don't even want to believe exist. And this is where things get disturbing. While filming in Colombia, Caviezel says the crew witnessed scenes that didn't feel like a movie anymore. Children are being sold openly in daylight like merchandise. He later said something chilling. What we filmed was fiction, but what we saw was real. He returned to Hollywood expecting support. A film about saving children should have been celebrated, right? But according to Caviezel, the opposite happened. The doors started closing, and suddenly, the industry that once praised him went silent.
Fear, and with something like Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at QAnon concepts of these rings that are run by the high-level elites.
For some reason, the entire media is smearing this movie as a dangerous conspiracy theory. The press is saying that the star, Jim Caviezel, is a QAnon guy. And Jim plays Tim Ballard, which is strange because just a few years ago, the same media was celebrating Tim Ballard's heroics.
And this is where the story takes a darker turn. According to insiders, major studios didn't just ignore the film, they were afraid of it. Whispers started spreading across Hollywood. Executives receiving quiet warnings, phone calls that were never meant to be public. The message was simple: don't touch this movie. Some were allegedly told that supporting it could cost them their careers. A film about saving children, yet nobody wanted to stand next to it. Strange, right?
I was not emotionally prepared for the new film, Sound of Freedom. You've heard it referred to as a right-wing film, as a Christian film, as a conspiracy movie, as a QAnon.
Now think about this for a second. Why would an entire industry bury a film about saving children? Why would powerful people work so hard to keep a story quiet that should have been celebrated? Then something happened. The Epstein documents were unsealed. People expected a few shocking names, but what appeared was far bigger. A list stretching across industries, politicians, billionaires, and celebrities. People linked to parties, private flights, and visits to Epstein's Island. And one name caught the attention of those already following Jim Caviezel's warnings: Ellen DeGeneres. Her name reportedly appeared in a 2014 email related to meeting schedules. Nothing directly incriminating, but enough to make people pause. Suddenly, questions started forming. How close was she to Epstein's world? And did she know more than the public realized?
Let's be honest, are we shocked that Ellen DeGeneres is in the Epstein files? Because I know I'm not. I've always thought there was something super strange about this woman. But let's dive into it. Epstein files explode. Ellen DeGeneres was named Hollywood's most horrific eating children's in the Epstein files. Now, let's dive into it because she has some deep ties to Epstein. Ellen was one of the very first celebrities who announced she was leaving the United States when Trump became president. And why is that? Maybe it's because Trump was releasing the Epstein files when no other president prior to him would, which she knew she would be named in them.
Caviezel claims he personally reached out to her, begging her to use her massive platform to speak about the children connected to Epstein's Island. But according to him, she never spoke. And just when the story couldn't get more unsettling, another name enters the picture: Anne Heche. Anne and Ellen were one of Hollywood's first openly gay couples. In August 2022, the actress died after a devastating car crash in Los Angeles, driving into a home before a massive fire took her life. For some, it was a tragic accident. For others, it became another unanswered question, tied to a story filled with mysteries, silence, and connections people are still trying to understand.
And as the driver by TMZ and Fox 11 out there in Los Angeles identified as Anne Heche. Let's take a look one more time at that video that we saw earlier this afternoon of a car going into a house taking place there out in Mar Vista.
House of Preston, and car slam.
The official ruling said it was an accident. Case closed. But it's not always that simple. Some people pointed to Anne Heche's past interviews, where she hinted at dark experiences inside Hollywood. Things she said were too disturbing to fully explain. Then came another claim. Some reports suggested she had been working on a documentary about child trafficking networks. Did that documentary really exist? Was it ever finished? No one knows for sure. But the timing made people question everything. As the Epstein revelations were gaining attention, Anne was suddenly gone. What is known is that Anne spent years trying to process experiences from her time with Ellen, saying some memories were too painful to even speak out loud. And then silence. No answers, no explanations that satisfied everyone. Just a tragedy surrounded by questions that refused to disappear. Oh, coincidence? Or another story the public was never meant to look too closely at? But Ellen wasn't the only name raising eyebrows. As people dug deeper into the Epstein files, another powerful figure kept appearing: Oprah Winfrey. Her name reportedly surfaced multiple times in deposition transcripts. Oprah later stated she barely knew Epstein.
So to hear people say things that are just crazy, like I'm a part of a cabal and there's a whole conspiracy with children, that stuff makes me sad. It makes me sad more than anything that people would believe it.
Oprah says that she has nothing to do with it, but when you look into her past, it becomes difficult to believe her. She was associated with some of the most disgusting people. One of them is John of God. A Brazilian spiritual healer once praised worldwide, was even featured and supported on Oprah's show. He was later convicted and sentenced to nearly 400 years in prison for horrific crimes.
One of the most famous spiritual healers in the world rarely talks to anyone on camera. John of God agreed to sit down with me under a mango tree on the grounds of the casa. A group of his patients gathered to watch. John of God speaks only Portuguese, so Heather Cumming helped translate. Ready, guys? You describe yourself as a spiritual medium. What does that mean, a medium?
And suddenly, people began asking uncomfortable questions. How do such figures repeatedly cross paths with Oprah? We could have called it a coincidence, but it did not happen only once. In 2007, Oprah opened a leadership academy for underprivileged girls in South Africa. It was celebrated worldwide as a symbol of hope and opportunity. But soon after controversy struck, a dormitory matron at the school was accused of serious misconduct involving students. The story exploded into headlines. Oprah responded publicly. She faced the media, even testified before Congress, promising accountability. The case was eventually settled quietly. And while the scandal faded from news cycles, questions never fully disappeared. Was it simply a tragic failure of trust? Or another uncomfortable moment connected to a much larger conversation people were only beginning to have? For years, Oprah was also photographed alongside Harvey Weinstein at events and exclusive Hollywood parties. Smiles for the cameras long before the world knew what was happening behind the scenes. And when the allegations finally exploded, the silence before the outrage became part of the conversation. That's when Jim Caviezel used a word that stood out: gatekeepers. He used it to describe people who give their name, trust, and platform to systems that may be hurting vulnerable people even if they don't realize it. Now, to be clear, neither Ellen nor Oprah has been charged with any crime. But the connections, the photos, the timing, they leave one question hanging in the air. Are these just coincidences? Because sometimes the most powerful role in any system isn't the one in the spotlight, it's the one guarding the door. And then Epstein died. With his death, the public lost the one person who could have answered the biggest questions. Who knew what? Who went where? And how deep did it really go? The full story never made it to a courtroom. Instead, it disappeared behind sealed documents, legal walls, and what many call media silence. For years, Jim Caviezel has said this isn't just a scandal. He believes it's something bigger. Not one person, not one crime, but a system so powerful that exposing it feels almost impossible. Some believe a moment is coming for a reckoning. A day when the walls of secrecy finally fall. Because behind the famous names, behind the blacked-out documents, lies a reality many people don't want to face. The numbers alone are chilling. Over 300,000 children are reported unaccounted for in the United States. That's not just a statistic. That's a stadium filled with children. And reports say nearly 85,000 migrant children who crossed the southern border simply disappeared from tracking systems, vanished into a system that was supposed to protect them. The question Caviezel leaves us with isn't a comfortable one. There are names in the Epstein files, names that have been redacted, hidden, and kept from the public. Who are they? And who exactly has the power to keep them hidden? Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next video.